Imagine if you took your average Minecraft world and condensed it down into just one block. Yeah, and to make it even harder, you were set to hardcore, and then you added a 100-day limit. This is 100 days of one block hardcore Minecraft. If you do enjoy this video, please subscribe. As a small channel, I really need all the help I could get, and subscribing is absolutely free, so please consider subscribing. But I won't keep you waiting any longer, so let's hop straight into day one. Day one, I loaded into the new world, and to say the least, it was quite empty. There were also two suns for some reason, but nevertheless, I read the sign that told me to break the block below me, and so I did. To my surprise, I didn't die, the block regenerated, and I was standing on a new one. So then I broke it again, and again, and again. I then got my very first chest, which had some eggs and some seeds. From here, I decided to slightly expand my island, and using the logs I mined, I made some slabs and expanded. I continued to mine since there was literally nothing else to do, and after a while, I got my first friend and named him Ruben. I slightly expanded the island in case Ruben got any crazy ideas. Continuing the mining, I got some gravel, but since I didn't have any blocks under it, it just fell. I thought of jumping into the void to place a block under it, but quickly remembered that I was in hardcore, so I just let it be, and after a while, I got a water bucket from the chest and used that to place a slab under the infinite block. I also got myself a sapling, and like a second later I got an upgrade. Apparently I had reached phase 1, which was the plains phase. No idea what that means, and so I just continued expanding the island. By nighttime, I started getting different blocks like clay and melons. That's a pretty good sign, I think. I got another pig and also named him Ruben, mostly because I don't have the mental capacity to think of more names. Ruben was, however, more annoying than Ruben, but I was too focused on mining to really care. I then got a cow to add to my animal kingdom. I also named him Ruben. I told you I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. I got an egg which hatched into a chicken, and you can guess what I named him. That's right, it's Robert. The chicken seemed more special, so he needed a more special name. I also got myself a sheep, and continuing with the name trend, I named him Ruben. I tried making them an animal pen, which was admittedly very small. The next day, I started squishing the animals into the world's smallest pen. After a while, I got chicken number 2. He was also squished into the pen. And from then on, any animals I got, I squished straight into the pen. Day 2 was quite uneventful, to be honest. More animals spawned, and so I expanded the pen. I also tried separating them, which wasn't my worst idea. Issue was, I got too many of the same animal and just forgot all their names. So I renamed all of them to Michael. The Michael seemed so happy, and so I continued to mine. I got some more saplings to add to my collection and then got myself an upgrade. Honestly, I was very excited because plains was extremely boring. Phase 2 was the underground phase. I mined some cobble and made myself a new pick. I also expanded to the side of the island in hopes of making a tree farm. On the third day, I finally remembered to put on my texture pack, so let's just pretend I had it on the entire time. I also went down under the dirt and placed some slabs. At this point, I wanted to mine all the dirt because honestly, dirt was probably the most valuable thing. A mushroom then spawned. I would name him, but he will very likely die. And with the arrival of my mushroom, I realized that the animal pen was getting quite small, and it definitely needed some expansion, and so I expanded it. I got the mushroom in, then separated the animals best I could. By nighttime, they were all separated, with the chickens getting the smallest space. I mined for a while until I got jumped by some zombies. The next thing on my list was building a working tree farm. I was getting sick of having no wood, so then I decided to whip up the world's smallest tree farm. I also had some more encounters with zombies, a little less scary this time if I'm being honest, and then the block of truth spawned some rabbits. I ended up losing some because they jump off the edge. Yeah, it was pretty bad, but I did manage to save one, which I named Romeo. I tried getting Romeo a Juliet, but she ended up like the rest. Nevertheless, I got a Juliet after many tries. The sheep then escaped, but I was just glad that I got the rabbits in. I also got chased by some phantoms, but they were no match to my axe. The next morning, I started the farming revolution. I planted some wheat seeds, pumpkins, and some melons. I also made myself an iron pick because mining with the woodwind was honestly getting tiring. I continued to mine until a creeper spawned. This was likely the closest I've been to pooping my pants in this entire recording. I did end up killing the creeper, so thankfully nothing was broken. From here, just some more mobs that scared the life out of me, but nothing too crazy. It was getting dark though, so I decided to shear the sheep and make myself a cozy bed. And for the first time, I was able to sleep. I then expanded the platform because things were getting a little crammed. On the new platform, I planted 4 spruce saplings, which gave me this giant tree. After collecting the wood from it, I started working on my base. Didn't really have much of a plan for the base, but what I did know is that I wanted to make sure that the infinite block was the centerpiece of the whole build. And to make something a centerpiece, I just built a giant circle around it. After realizing that the circle was basically just a giant mob spawner, I decided to double up on the layers, which stopped the mobs from spawning. From here, I made a giant plus to connect everything, and gave it a nice oak outline. I also needed an infinite water source, so I used a bone meal water trick to do it. I then filled in the circle because falling off wasn't exactly my plan. I mined some more while I was waiting for some spruce wood, and actually ended up getting my third upgrade. This phase was the icy tundra. A dog then spawned, but I literally had no bones. I trapped him just in case he had any ideas like the rabbits, and then mined in hopes of somehow getting bones. Some skeletons then spawned from the block, and they seemed to just hate each other, and so I just let that play out. I used the bones to name the dog and decided to name him Sven. I then realized that that wasn't exactly original, so I just called him Seven. And Seven was one of the best dogs and my only friend. Not in the game, in real life too. Anyways, after some mining, a white fox spawned. He quickly killed Robert, which would have been sad if I cared. I captured the fox using my skills and just let him vibe there. I then continued filling in the last two parts of the circle. I also organized the base a little more by making a cow grinder and then a new sheep farm. The next morning, I dealt with the entire world's population of creepers. And to make sure that that never happens again, I lit up all the possible spawnable spaces. From here, I wrapped up the sheep farm and got them all in. I also made a pig farm, but they wouldn't fit through the fence. I also ended up putting the mushrooms and chickens in a pen. Forget I said that. The next day, another fox spawned on the infinite block. He was sleeping under the tree, so he was quite an easy capture. And after some mining, some more skeletons spawned. I then got very, very low, but thankfully I lived through it. A bear then spawned and I named him Bernard, like the bear. I also put him in a pen and went on with my day. From here, I encountered my first monster party. Some skeletons and some zombie spawns, and I ran to my dogs in a hope of him killing all the skeletons. And unfortunately, he died to a zombie. In my grief, I killed all the skeletons, but my only friend had died. I made him a grave in the last place he lived. Rest in peace, Seven. I took this as a lesson and crafted myself a shield. No longer would I have to live in fear, but my boy had already died. Other dogs had spawned and I tamed them, but out of guilt, I killed them. No one could replace Seven. On the bright side, I got another upgrade, and it was the ocean phase. The next day, I decided to start work on a mob farm. I did actually end up building it wrong, but was way too lazy to restart. I added in the water, filled in the flooring, added a wall to keep all the mobs in, and then quickly slapped on a roof. It was actually working pretty well. So I did some farming to just end off the night. Day 17, I did some mining in the new phase, which got me some turtles. I named them Raphael and Michelangelo. I don't want them to die of dehydration, so I made some space around the animal farms for an aquarium. I got the turtles into the mini aquarium and slightly decorated it with some seagrass. Nothing too crazy though, I'm not rich. Next day was quite a boring one. I caught a fish to add to the aquarium and then got attacked by some very annoying guardians, and then mined for some time. Until a big guardian attacked me. It did end up having the same fate as my rabbits, and another one had actually spawned at nighttime and almost got me killed. Day 19 was spent saving the dolphins from themselves. I also stumbled upon another monster party. I dealt with the elder guardian first by giving him the good old rabbit killer. I then easily just killed the rest. From here, I tried moving the foxes into their own pens. Well, let's just say that wasn't happening anytime soon. So I moved my focus to building my turtles the world's biggest aquarium. I first started by destroying the old tree farm and filling it in with some wood. I then filled it in with some water, and after finishing the water part, I decided to add a giant tree with leaves all over. I then moved in the turtles, making sure not to kill any of them. And by the end of it all, it was looking beautiful. After the aquarium, I went back to mining where I somehow got myself a trident. I was kind of like Aquaman, except more handsome and muscular. I then drained the old aquarium, which was sad, but the new one was looking a lot better. After some mining, I got myself a musical chest. Inside was the disc mall, and with no hesitation, I grabbed my diamond and made myself a jukebox. I then played it, and it was beautiful. Going into the next morning, I got an upgrade. The next phase was the jungle dungeon. I wasn't quite emotionally prepared to move on to the next phase without building a monument for Seven. So I first started by building a small platform. And from here, I built a statue using some of the ocean blocks that I had just gotten. And after completion, it was actually looking pretty good. I expanded the platform to make sure I wouldn't accidentally fall and bid him one final farewell. Day 25, I patched up the old aquarium since I had a new and better one. I also thought it would be a good idea to get myself a better working tree farm. After cleaning up the area, I placed down some slabs, then filled them in with some dirt. I exclusively planted spruce saplings for now, but quickly got to work on the other tree farms. And after some time, I planted my other saplings and started putting my farms to use. And I sure did get myself a whole lot of wood. Day 28, I thought this would be a good time to finish off a project. So I finished off the aquarium by adding some sand islands and some custom and very ugly palm trees. God, I suck at building. And with the end of that project, I thought I should start a new one. My storage system was looking quite small, and so that is what I started working on. I worked on this the following day as well. It was taking up many resources, but thankfully I had tons to spare. I added some fencing in case of me doing a rabbit, and then started placing in some chests. I also added in some furnaces between all the chests to add a nice functional look to it, and from here I started moving all the items without actually sorting them, and the next day is when I finally started to sort them, and by nighttime, everything was fully sorted. From here I got back to mining. I really had nothing else to do. I ran across some parrots, which I quickly tamed. I named both of them Rio, since I knew if I named them anything else I would instantly forget. They both sat on top of the 7 statue and just kinda vibed. 2 seconds later I was viciously attacked by some Vexes, which if you didn't know isn't very good, but to be honest they weren't really much of a threat. An Ocelot also spawned, but I wasn't able to tame it. I was still determined to tame a cat even on day 32, but after getting some leather boots, I knew it was time to give up fishing. The cat got the bad end of it. I continued mining until my boy George showed up. George was the first friend I had since 7. I took George to my storage system and added a little fence. I will admit, after George showed up, things did get slightly worse with 2 witches attacking me. But come on, it was Big Man George. I also got 2 horses with no saddles. I did actually end up building a stable for them. Yes, it was small, but I really couldn't care less. And to finish off the day, I tried capturing the foxes roaming around. But yet again, I kind of just let the foxes loose. He didn't seem to like being trapped, and so I continued to mine. I got some more birds and named them Rio, of course. They also sat on top of 7 statue. I got 2 more horses, but if I put any more horses in that tiny stable, Peter would definitely try to cancel me on Twitter. I then grew a giant jungle tree from the saplings I got and collected all the wood. At this point, I was so tired of the jungle phase, and so I mined for the whole day. Another monster party happened, which was quite frankly really easy. The next upgrade was finally here, and I was so glad. I was so tired of the jungle one, and this next phase was the Red Desert. Day 38 through to day 41 were all spent farming. I first started by destroying the old farm. From here, I started building the new farm. I planted some melons and some pumpkins. I added a frame looking thing and then stripped it. Then some final little details to wrap it all up. And it looked ugly, but it was functional, and so I left it. I also built a sugarcane farm for my 2 sugarcane, and for some extra sticks, I made a bamboo farm. And to wrap it all up, I built a wheat farm. I then added some chests, and that was the very tiny farming revolution. Day 42, I got back to it. I first started by mining the infinite block, which gave me some bad land blocks. A llama had then spawned. I pushed Longneck into his own pen, and he seemed unbothered, so good, I think. Another fox had spawned. He took a nap under a tree, which is where I trapped him. To make matters worse, another spawned. I was gonna kill him, but honestly I felt bad, so I trapped him as well. But through my hate of foxes, a villager had spawned. Her name was Frida, or Frida. I wasn't prepared for a villager breeder yet, so I set up a small shack beside the animals. The next day I got to work building Frida her own kingdom. I also built a and put up a sign declaring Frida Town. Day 44, I sheared some sheep to make myself some beds for Frida Town. I then went to Frida Town to build a small villager breeder. I didn't bother searching up how to build one because my level of intellect is way beyond searching things up. Spoiler alert, it doesn't actually work. But I moved Frida into it anyway. The next morning is when I realized that the breeder was broken. I was too stubborn, so I just ignored it. After this, I went back to mining in hopes for a partner for Frida. All I got were some husks, and so I killed them. After some time, I got a big-nosed creature, not exactly a villager. I took Squidward and his cousin back to the storage system, and I was 90% sure they would despawn after like 2 minutes. Something else spawned. Lewis was a scammer, but I bought flowers from him anyways. While Lewis roamed, I continued to mine and got donkeys. I was slightly losing hope at this point. Day 46, I continued the villager search, but instead got 2 vindicators. It looked like they wanted to hug me, but did quite the opposite. I killed them easily by just building up. I then got caught in yet another monster party, and although I've never been to a real-life party, I'm pretty sure there's a lot less death. I gave up on the villager search at this point and decided to replace the grass with some slabs. I did have to kill the rabbits, which would have been sad if I remembered their names. I ended up making a carrot farm, not in honor of the rabbits. I just needed some carrots if I'm being honest. A llama somehow got up here, so I killed him because no one messes with my carrot farm. And that feeling of killing the llama made me realize that my island was quite cramped. So day 48, I killed a whole bunch of mobs. Lewis was no exception. I then built around the carrot farm because some floating dirt wasn't the best looking thing. What I built wasn't much better. Day 49, my man Walter had finally arrived. I then took him against his will to Frida Town, where Frida tried to escape, but came back. Walter and Frida were then entrapped in the world's most fortified prison, a boat. I then tore down the old villager breeder and built a new, worse one. I then moved them both in and fed them, and then stared awkwardly for a while until, you know. The next morning, I continued my staring from afar. No, this isn't weird, this is for science. Anyways, I realized that the villagers were actually able to jump out of their new home. So I added some fences and saved little Billy. I also moved Big Man George to 7 statue. Day 51, the second Billy spawned, and to prepare for when he grew up, I started building a small villager trader. I also added in some walls to the platform. The next day, the villagers were all grown up. I then took Billy number 1 and made him a Fletcher. I then traded to get my first emeralds. From here, I set up all the other chambers for the villagers. I also moved Billy number 2 into his own chamber, which was more of a pain, but I still got it done. I then destroyed some big trees and got some sticks to trade. After collecting like 1,000,000 sticks, I did some trading. And while I wasn't recording, a creeper blew up George in part of 7 statue. I had already lost 2 of my closest friends and felt terrible. I repaired and put up a bone and bamboo in honor of 7 and George. I then lit up everything just to make sure that this would never happen again. From here, I did some more mining and got a hoglin spawn egg. Kind of forgot what those were, so I spawned one and it was shaking, so I just slowly backed away from it. I also got a new wandering trader, and her life was definitely short-lived. A chest then popped out of the infinite block, and it had some slime balls. These balls would be used to make a lead. I used the leads to get the foxes tied up near 7 statue. After some mining, I went back to the villagers and did some more toolsmith trading. Also got myself an armorer and gave him a nice dance. The goal was to get full diamond tools and armor. I traded for the most useless items in hopes of leveling up the villagers. And after some time, I got some diamond pants. I danced for my favorite villager again to thank him. I also got new shoes and a diamond axe. Using the axe, I got some wood to trade for some emeralds. And those emeralds would be used to get myself full diamond armor. After getting dripped down in diamond armor, I wanted a pick, but was kind of broke. So I got a new villager, traded some more, and finally got myself a diamond pickaxe. And so after I was done, I went back to mining with my full diamond tools and got an upgrade. And this next phase was the most dangerous of all. I built a cage around the block just in case anything fiery tried to burn down my island. Day 60 finally rolled around and I got to mining. I wanted to save some of the blocks, and so I branched out and used some of the bone meal to try and save them. And my first real threat was a piglin. I was freaked out, especially when my building up strategy didn't work, but after a while they did become zombie piglins and I was easily able to kill them. After some more mining, I got some netherite, which was honestly very underwhelming, and right after I got some obsidian, and hopefully I could get enough to build myself a nether portal. Some magma cubes also spawned. I tried to save them, but I didn't have any name tags, so they were kind of destined to die. The next day I got a librarian in hopes of getting a name tag, but his trades were just way too expensive. I wasn't gonna kill Magmi the magma cube, but he did smack me, so he had to meet his fate. The mining continued into the next day, and it quickly stopped when I got attacked by some blazes. At this point, I was more worried about my base burning down than my life. Anyways, I did end up killing all the blazes and getting their rods. After some mining, a shaky boy spawned. I named him Shaker because he was shaky. I'm not very creative. I took Shaky to the cow farm and kept him there until I got myself some lava. Day 63, I got a wither skull from the infinite block of truth, and I was actually hoping to get enough wither skulls to eventually fight the wither. On day 200, that is. The chest also gave me some lava buckets, which I used to make a cobblestone generator, and of course, a home for my boy Shaky the Shaker. The next day, I crafted a brewing stand and took yet another victim into the eternal prison. I traded for some redstone, lapis, glowstone, and most importantly, some ender pearls. I got some more magma cubes from mining and killed them all since I didn't want them to suffer like Magmi. I also managed to get myself enough ancient debris to make a netherite ingot. I didn't know what to use it on just yet, so I just left it in my chest for now. And then I got what I feared most from this phase, a monster party. It wasn't too bad except for the impending fear of my whole island burning down. I tried drowning the blazes, which sort of worked, but in the end I just killed them manually. And after killing them all, I continued to mine and got myself a second strider. I then took him to Shaky's home and they made quite the team. Day 66, I managed to get all the obsidian needed for a nether portal, which took a lot longer than I want to admit. And day 67, I built a nether portal using that obsidian. Now, it wasn't exactly lined up with the path, but I could care less at this point. I then lit up the portal and headed in. I was welcomed straight away with 2 ghasts trying to kill me. After dealing with them, I collected some blocks and noticed a nether fortress very far off in the distance. I wasn't quite prepared at this point, so I collected some quartz and then headed on home. Day 68 marked the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. I bought myself some redstone and used the quartz to make some observers. The first farm I decided to industrialize was the sugarcane farm. I added in some pistons, threw in some cobble, and then some redstone on top. And technically the farm was fully functional. I did add a water system for collection and a shell just to make sure that nothing was flying out. I was getting really scared of the nether phase, so I decided to make it my mission the next day to finish off this phase. Many netherite scraps later, I got an upgrade. This next phase was the exact opposite of the nether one. It was very peaceful, too peaceful. I mined some blocks to see what I would get, and I actually got some pretty good stuff. And after a while, I managed to get myself a beehive. So I quickly prepared a makeshift home for Barry B. Benson, added in some nice flowers, and went back to mining in hopes for a bee. And after some time, Barry finally decided to show up. I took him to his home and then called it a day. The next day I was on the search for the second bee. I got the bees, but well, they were pretty angry at me. After some time though, they did calm down and I took some of them back to Barry. A cat also showed up and I captured it using a lead and then tamed it. I then took Matilda the cat to the trader where I bought a new bow. I also got myself a new friend. I wasn't sure if Slimy the Slime would stick around, but he was pretty harmless, so I just kept him. A zombie horse also spawned, so me and Slimy took him back to the storage system and imprisoned him like the rest of the animals. I got a name tag to name Slimy, but I didn't have an envelope, so Slimy still had a chance of not living. I was gonna kill him, but I thought putting him in a boat for life seemed more morally correct. I also got a second zombie horse, and he was awfully comfortable with the other horse. Am I even allowed to show this on YouTube? Day 74, I checked in on Slimy, and he was still good. Another monster party started. There were a bunch of bees and some other harmless creatures, so it was pretty easy. The rest of the day, I continued on mining, and eventually got myself a new upgrade. I was sad to see this phase go, but it was time for change. This next phase was the Desolate Land. No idea what that means, but I got to mining. Nothing interesting, so I decided to leave it and craft myself a grindstone and use that for trading. I headed back into the Nether on day 76 through to day 77. I then started bridging my way to the Nether fortress. The wither skeletons tried to attack me, but being 4'11" definitely helped me escape. I also got myself some blaze rods, which was pretty cool. And then to wrap it all off, I traded with some piglins and essentially got scammed, so I killed him. Day 78 to 80 I mined. Yeah, that was pretty much it. I then got viciously attacked by some skeleton night things. And like 2 minutes later, I got attacked by whatever these things are. They were scary, but gave me a totem, so I didn't really mind. Another monster party then started, but having the totem made me kind of fearless. And then finally, to wrap off day 80, I got a new upgrade. The next phase was the end phase. I would say I'm nervous, but at this point, I was ready to square up with the Ender Dragon. Day 81, I got enough iron to make an anvil, so I could finally get a name tag, but unfortunately, Slimy despawned. Oh, never mind, he's just invisible. Slimy was finally named, and I had my first named friend. I then started expanding my circle to make a small island for Slimy. I finished the platform on day 82 and started to make a cryo chamber looking thing for Slimy. Plan was to trap him inside forever to make sure that he didn't have the same fate as Seven and George. I got Slimy into his cage and closed him in. I had to say my final goodbyes, and it was a sacrifice I was willing to take. I also got a new shovel, which I enchanted with Silk Touch. The next day, I made a new platform. This one would be used to make a grass farm. After finishing the slabbing, I placed in some dirt and then put in my grass. I also tried putting it up with some water, but I just ended up flooding it. I did fix it though, and then added in some walls using trapdoors, and then just finished off the project. Day 85, I collected some leaves and wood and then just made the world's ugliest tree. But the effort was there, and so the result is irrelevant. Think I just quoted XQC. Anyways, I planted some more trees because me building them wasn't leading to the best of results. On day 86, I did more collecting, but this time I collected some grass. I put this grass everywhere around my base, at the bamboo farm, near the animals, and in many other places. Day 87 to 88, I headed back into the Nether. Plan was to trade with some piglins and explore some new areas. I ventured off into the Crimson Forest and was chased by a hoglin. I mined into the wall to escape and came across a bastion. This was honestly extremely lucky. The chest loot was honestly pretty good, and the piglins were pretty easy to kill. The hoglins were kind of scary though. I traded some more with the piglins as I killed their captain. They apparently didn't seem to like that, so I just killed them as well. The loot from trading wasn't very good, so I continued to explore the bastion in hopes of finding more and better loot. I didn't find anything really worth my time. I tried to continue exploring, but the hoglins had different plans for me, and after getting thrown into the lava, I thought I would call it a day. Day 89 to 92, I began preparations for the Ender Dragon fight. I first started by making myself a small platform beside the mob farm. This place would be used for my enchanting table. I tried making bookshelves, but I had like 3 books. I killed some of my mushrooms for leather, and I only kept the siblings to make sure that the family tree was a nice circle, but nevertheless, the leather was not enough. I moved on to plan B, which was to trade for some bookshelves. I then moved Billy number 73 into another chamber, and then I used my emeralds to buy some bookshelves from him. And after some trainings, I got myself enough bookshelves for the whole 30 enchanting levels. From here, I got to work on enchanting. I switched out my pick for a new one and enchanted for Unbreaking 3. I prayed for some good enchants and got like literally the best pickaxe. Maybe an exaggeration, but still pretty good. I did the same thing for my axe and got some pretty good enchants. My bow, however, was a different story. I made myself a diamond sword, and when I enchanted it, it had like every single enchant. This sword was the best thing to happen to me, which is pretty sad to think about. Swiftly moving on from that, I started to enchant my armor. And instead of me sitting there and showing you, here is a quick 10-second montage of me doing that. By the end, I was in full diamond armor and tools, but through my testing, I noticed that the mob farm was very slow. I went up to fix it, and the issue seemed to be that the spiders would be just hogging the hole. So to stop them from spawning at all, I added in some slabs, and after finishing that, I went back down to test out the farm. I killed the first batch of mobs, and then they just didn't spawn. I think I may have broken the farm. The farm was working, but it was just a lot slower. So I didn't exactly fix it. Day 94, I headed back into Frida's town. The plan now was to get mending because my armor was almost broken. I got mending pretty easily, but it cost way too much. At this point, I really needed it, so I just bought it anyways and put it on my chestplate and pants. I also decided to upgrade the chestplate to netherite as well as the pants. And on days 95 and 96, I spent more time doing ender dragon fight preparations. I first got flame for my bow. I then put mending on the helmet and the boots, and spent the rest of the day beating the crap out of some mobs for some XP. With 3 days left, I brewed some slow falling potions with the permission of Bobby the Brewer. I also began mining in the end phase, where I ran into some endermite. Their lives were very short-lived. Some endermen also spawned. They tried to beat me up, but once they got hit by my axe, they settled down. He tried attacking me again, but you know, my big muscles scared him away. I also ran into a shulker, but he didn't drop any shulker shells. A monster party also spawned, and they were quickly dealt with. And after a little more mining, the end was near. I placed in 3 of the ender eyes and grabbed my stuff. And as the clock winding down, day 100 struck. I placed in the last eye and jumped in. I first tested my fear factor with the endermen, and they were still somehow terrified of my gigantic muscles. I then shot down the end crystals one by one. And after I shot down the last one, I started shooting the ender dragon. It landed, so I quickly drank my potion and beat the ender dragon up. And after some time, the dragon was so low. I threw in my last ender pearl and got my last hit. And after defeating the ender dragon, I thought about exploring the end, but that's for 200 days. I collected the dragon egg and then headed home. I went straight to 7's statue, played the song, and placed the egg. Please consider subscribing or even leaving a like, and thank you for watching. This has been 100 days of 1 block hardcore Minecraft.